secret cameras, forbidden nights,
$1,000!
and one bid that exposed it all.
Your engine won't start today, just like our marriage. And trust me, fixing this is way more complicated than a busted carburetor. The wrench slid from my sweaty hand, hitting the garage floor with a clang. That sound was immediately drowned out by a voice that cut through the humid evening air like a rusty saw blade. Ethan, honey, I hope your wife feels better soon. That Dr. Thompson is practically living at your house. I ducked out from under the hood of my battered pickup, wiping motor oil onto a faded rag. Brenda Maxwell, the neighborhood's self-appointed chief of intelligence, stood at the edge of my driveway. At 50-something, she had eyes that missed nothing and a penchant for drama that would make a soap opera director blush. If Claire is sick, it's news to me, Brenda, I said, forcing a laugh that felt like gravel in my throat. Maybe she's just allergic to honest small-town living. Brenda's carefully sculpted brown hair seemed to stiffen. She leaned in, dropping her voice to a theatrical whisper. Well, I want to pry, but Dr. Thompson's sleek Mercedes has been parked where Clara usually keeps her Audi almost every day this week. Right there. My gut twisted. Dr. Caleb Thompson, Clara's new colleague at the Crestwood Medical Group. Smooth as silk, designer suits, married with a picture-perfect family, and a reputation for having a very dedicated bedside manner. Thanks for the heads up, Brenda. I managed, my voice steady despite the seismic shift happening in my chest. I'll be sure to ask Clara about her new friend from work. After Brenda shuffled off, no doubt already drafting the next chapter of her neighborhood novel, I stood alone. Ethan J. Miller, 41, owner of Miller's Mobile Repairs. My hands, scarred from years of fixing broken appliances and plumbing, felt heavy. I could fix anything that had a wire or a pipe, but I couldn't seem to fix the beautiful, broken thing I call my life. I'd worked 16-hour days for over a decade to build this business, to give Clara and our two daughters the life they deserved. Chloe, 13, sharp and observant, and Lily, 7, still convinced the world was spun from pure magic. Clara was the golden child, valedictorian, full ride to med school, now a respected cardiologist. I was just the guy who showed up at school events with grease under his nails. But we were a unit, or so I thought. Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Before we dive into the chilling detail of how I went full-on private, I had to catch my wife, do me a solid. Hit that like button if you've ever had a gut feeling that something was seriously wrong. And if you're into real-life stories where the betrayed husband actually wins, make sure you subscribe and ring that bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss how the other shoe drops in part 2. Now, let's get back to the night everything shattered. Clara finally rolled in late that night, smelling faintly of surgical soap and a whisper of peppermint, her go-to distraction scent. She mumbled something about emergency consultations, kissed my cheek with cold lips, and disappeared upstairs to shower. I sat in my armchair, the silence of the house deafening, listening to the water running and counting the years that had slipped through my fingers. When did the laughter stop? When did the passion become a routine? When did she become a stranger? The next morning, I made a choice that had nothing to do with plumbing or engines. I drove to the nearest electronics store and purchased a top-of-the-line home security system, professional grade, motion activated, and tied directly to my phone. Keeping an eye on the contractors, the cashier asked with a bored look. Something like that. I replied, the lie tasting bitter and cold. I spent my lunch break meticulously installing the cameras. One in the living room, hidden behind a slightly crooked landscape painting. Another in the kitchen, tucked neatly between two oversized cookbooks. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting, that Brenda was just a bored busybody. But deep down, I knew paranoia was the last, desperate measure of a man whose life was dissolving. The first alert hit my phone the next afternoon. The buzzing vibration almost made me drop my client's brand new stainless steel sink. The timestamp read 2:51 p.m. Clara should have been reviewing patient files at the medical group. My hand was shaking as I opened the video feed. There she was, Clara, in the sapphire blue dress I bought her last Christmas. She was laughing, her head tipped back with an authentic joy I hadn't seen directed at me in months. Then Dr. Caleb Thompson walked into the frame. He was everything I wasn't. Impeccably dressed, smooth, radiating the kind of effortless success I had to sweat blood for. He moved through my home like it was a casual extension of his office, confident and completely at ease. They talked for a few moments, standing so close I could practically feel the warmth between them through the screen. Too close. Thompson's hand casually found her lower back, and she didn't flinch. She leaned into the touch. Then it happened. My phone screen spiderwebbed as I gripped it too hard. They moved toward the stairs. I didn't need the camera to follow them. My own mind, the cruelest kind of film director, filled in every single painful, vivid detail. 23 minutes later, they reappeared. Clara's hair was mussed, and Thompson's collar was visibly skewed. They were whispering by the front door when the door suddenly swung open and 7-year-old Lily walked in, home from a half-day at school. Thompson recoiled as if he'd been hit by an electric current. His face went instantly pale, and he practically sprinted out the back kitchen door, vanishing without a word. Lily looked confused. "Mommy, who was that man?" she asked, her voice small and innocent. "Just a friend from work, sweetheart," Clara said, her voice instantly dropping to that calm, professional tone she used with worried patience. "He stopped by to drop off some paperwork." I wanted to punch through the wall. The lies came so easily, so reflexively. But worse than the betrayal was the sheer, reckless carelessness. Having their affair in our home, where our daughter could walk in at any moment. It wasn't just disrespectful. It was a profound failure as a mother and a wife. I couldn't eat dinner that night. I sat there, watching Clara play the perfect mother, helping Lily with her homework, asking Chloe about her best friend. It was an Oscar-worthy performance of domestic bliss. "You're awfully quiet, Ethan," Clara said later as we got ready for bed. "Everything okay?" I looked at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, the woman I'd loved for 15 years. The stranger who was systematically demolishing our family. "Just tired," I said, a voice that was both a lie and the absolute truth. "Long, long day." She nodded and returned to brushing her teeth, humming a gentle tune. The same tune she used to hum when we were teenagers, planning our impossible future together. I lay awake that night, not screaming, not crying, but planning. This wasn't going to end with a polite, civilized discussion. Clara had made her move. Now, the gloves were off. The next week was a blur of surveillance. My cameras became my silent, unforgiving witnesses. Tuesday's visit lasted an hour and 15 minutes. Thursday's house call ended with them sharing a bottle of expensive wine in my kitchen, using the crystal glasses we got as a wedding gift. Each video was a fresh wound, a new, heavy nail in the coffin of our marriage. But I watched them all. I had to catalog the full scope of the deception. Knowledge was the only weapon I had left. On Friday night, I found my way to the Crestwood Boxing Club, pounding the heavy bag until my knuckles were bruised and raw. Mitch, the fire hydrant Marino, found me there. Mitch and I had been friends since high school, back when we both dreamed of going pro. Now, he ran a towing business that navigated the legal gray zones of town. "You're gonna break your hands, Jay," Mitch said, holding the bag steady. He was built like his nickname, short, thick, and surprisingly kind. "Maybe that's the point," I grunted, throwing a brutal combination that rattled the chains. "Want to talk about it?" I stopped, pulling off my gloves. The gym smelled of old sweat, leather, and disappointment. "Clara's having an affair," I said. Mitch didn't flinch. "I figured. Brenda's been talking about a doctor at the diner for weeks. You know how she is." "Who is it?" "Caleb Thompson." Mitch whistled low. "High roller. What's your play, man? You want payback? Make it hurt, but you gotta be smart. Nothing that lands you in a cell or screws up the girls' lives." "Don't worry," I said, toweling off the sweat. "I'm going to hit him where it hurts the most, his reputation and his wallet." That weekend, I expanded my territory. I followed Thompson's black Mercedes from the medical group to a rundown, hourly rate motel called the Riverside Rendezvous. I parked across the street and waited. 20 minutes later, Clara's silver Audi pulled into the lot. She looked around furtively, almost running to room 209. Thompson was waiting, opening the door before she could knock. They stayed inside for 2 hours and 14 minutes. I know the exact time because I sat there, watching my life bleed out in front of me, timing every agonizing second. This wasn't a mistake. It was a scheduled operation. A full-blown, elaborate deception. When they finally emerged, Clara looked different. Younger, somehow. The kind of vibrant happiness I hadn't seen on her face in years. It should have made me feel relief for her, but it only fueled the ice-cold fury settling in my core. That night, I made my first calculated move. I waited until 3 a.m., then drove to the medical group's parking lot. Thompson was pulling a night shift in the emergency room, saving lives while simultaneously destroying mine. I had a bag of granulated sugar from our kitchen and a small box cutter from my toolbox. The sugar went first, straight into his gas tank. It would crystallize in the fuel line and turn his expensive engine into a beautiful paperweight within a few miles. The box cutter made quick work of his rear tires. Two careful, shallow slits that would ensure they were flat, but not instantly destroyed. Then, the final touch. I found a used, empty condom wrapper in a gas station restroom garbage can, a disgusting prop, but a powerful one. I placed it under his windshield wiper with a note written in heavy, block letters. For your next house call. I was home and back in bed by 4 a.m., slipping in beside Clara as if nothing had happened. She stirred slightly, but didn't wake. I listened to her breathe, wondering if she was dreaming of him. The psychological warfare had begun. The next morning, Clara was jumpy at breakfast. She was unusually talkative, asking about my repair jobs and fiddling constantly with her coffee cup. You seem stressed, I said, buttering my toast with deliberate slowness. Maybe you should see a specialist. Very funny, she replied, but her laugh was thin. I'm a specialist. Not unless he makes house calls and brings wine, I said, finally meeting her eyes. The color drained from her face. For a fleeting moment, the mask slipped. I saw the raw guilt and paralyzing fear. Then, the professional barrier snapped back up. I don't know what you mean, Ethan. Don't you? I chewed my toast slowly, letting the silence scream. It just seems like you've been having a lot of medical emergencies lately. Very dedicated of you to make private visits. Her phone buzzed, and she snatched it up, clearly desperate for a distraction. But when she read the message, her face went ghost white. She shoved the phone into her purse. Everything okay? I asked with feigned innocence. Fine, she gasped. Emergency at the hospital. Gotta run. She gave me a quick, empty kiss and hurried out, leaving her coffee untouched. Through the window, I watched her sit in her Audi for several minutes, talking on the phone with frantic intensity. Phase 1 complete. Thompson knew he was being watched. Clara knew her secret was a time bomb. The slow, relentless pressure was now fully engaged. I spent the morning fixing things, a leaky faucet, a broken refrigerator, letting the mundane work keep my hands busy while my mind orchestrated the coming storm. But first, a quick stop. The Crestwood Diner was the nerve center of the town's gossip circuit, and Brenda Maxwell was, as always, holding court. I found her at her usual booth, surrounded by her inner circle. Ethan, she called out, eyes wide with anticipation. How is Clara feeling? Any better? Actually, I came to thank you for mentioning the doctor visits, I said, sliding into the booth next to her. You were right to be concerned. The other women leaned forward, the scent of fresh gossip making them practically vibrate. Oh, Brenda's eyes narrowed. Yeah, turns out Clara's been having some very personal medical issues. Female troubles. I lowered my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Very embarrassing for her. Dr. Thompson has been making private house calls to help her through it, keeping it off the hospital records. The women nodded in sympathetic understanding, but I could see the information being twisted and mutated in their minds. By lunchtime, the story would be that Clara was dealing with fertility issues, seeing a specialist privately, and that Dr. Thompson was providing an extraordinarily attentive and possibly intimate level of care. Well, I'm glad it's nothing serious, Brenda said, though she looked slightly disappointed the story wasn't more scandalous. Oh, it's serious, I said, standing up to leave. Very serious. But I'm sure Dr. Thompson will take good care of her. He seems very dedicated to his patients. I left them to chew on that delicious, tainted morsel of information. The game was well underway, and I was already several moves ahead. In a small town like Crestwood, reputation is currency. I was about to devalue theirs to zero. You know the moment you realize your whole life has been a carefully constructed lie? Yeah, I got that text message. And it wasn't from my wife. It was from her best friend. By Wednesday, the small-town rumor mill was working exactly as I planned. At the hardware store, the guy asked if it was true Clara was having complicated women's troubles. At the gas pump, the attendant mentioned he'd heard she was seeing a private specialist. The story had grown legs and was running through Crestwood like a wildfire, but it was still just smoke. I needed the fire. The real breakthrough, the key to unlocking the whole conspiracy, came from an unexpected source, Melanie Hayes. She wasn't just Clara's best friend since high school. She was the head nurse at Crestwood Medical Group. I was finishing up a garbage disposal replacement for a client when my phone rang. It was Chloe, my 13-year-old. Dad, can I go to Mia's house after school? Mom said she might be late tonight. Another emergency? I asked, though I already knew the answer. I guess so. Melanie picked me and Lily up yesterday, too. She said Mom had to cover an unexpected shift. Click. The pieces snapped together. Melanie wasn't just a friend. She was an accomplice, providing alibis, watching the girls, and definitely covering for Clara at the hospital. That evening, I decided to do some reconnaissance. I drove to the medical group and parked where I could observe both the main entrance and the doctor's lot. Clara's Audi was there, but so was Thompson's Mercedes, now sporting 2 shiny new tires. The sugar in the gas tank hadn't ruined the engine yet, but the seed of doubt was planted. At 7:30 p.m., they emerged together, walking close but not touching. They got into their separate cars. Clara headed toward home. Thompson went straight toward the Riverside Rendezvous. I followed Clara, staying 3 cars back. She didn't go straight home. She pulled into the Crestwood Market, spending exactly 23 minutes inside. When she came out, she had 2 small bags of groceries and the look of a person desperately trying to establish an alibi. She beat me home by 15 minutes, just enough time to stash the bags and change into a comfortable t-shirt. When I walked through the door, she was sitting at the kitchen table, the picture of domestic tranquility, helping Lily with her math homework. How was work? I asked, hanging my jacket on the hook. Exhausting. 3 emergency consultations today. I barely had time to eat. Her shoulders were tight with tension. That's rough, I said. Good thing Melanie was able to pick up the girls. She looked up sharply, suspicion flashing in her eyes. How did you know about that? Chloe called me. She wanted to make sure it was okay to go to Mia's house tomorrow. Clara visibly relaxed. Oh, right. Yes, Melanie's been a lifesaver. I don't know what I'd do without her. I'll bet you don't, I thought. Before we get into the details of how Ethan discovered the ultimate betrayal, their future plans, if you're nodding along right now and appreciate the effort Ethan is putting into this surgical takedown, please smash the like button. And for those of you who know the only thing worse than being cheated on is being lied to by your best friend, share this video with someone who needs to see that betrayal has consequences. Now, let's go deeper undercover. That night, after Clara was asleep, I did something I never thought I would do. I went through her purse. I felt like a thief, but this was a war for my children's home. Desperate times. Her phone was locked, but after 15 years of marriage, I knew her combination. Lily's birthday, followed by Chloe's. The text messages were a goldmine. Dozens of exchanges between Claire and Thompson, ranging from innocent-sounding work chat to content so explicit it made my stomach churn. I scrolled through weeks of stolen intimacy, feeling nothing but a detached clinical coldness. But it was the thread between Clara and Melanie that truly opened my eyes. Clara, can you cover for me tomorrow afternoon? Caleb, and I need to talk. Melanie, of course. I'll tell Dr. Stevens you're doing an urgent consultation in Maplewood. You're the best. I owe you dinner. Clara, just be careful. Brenda Maxwell has been asking too many questions. I scrolled back, watching the conspiracy unfold in real time. Melanie had been the silent partner, the gatekeeper, the provider of alibis. But then I saw something that made my blood run ice cold. References to the plan and after the divorce and when this is all over. They weren't just having an affair. They were actively planning to leave their spouses, merge their lives, and start a new, pristine chapter together. I took over 100 screenshots of everything. The sexts, the alibis, and most damningly, the plan. I stored them in a secure, hidden folder on my phone. I returned Clara's phone to her purse and went to the kitchen. The time for silent warfare was over. It was time to introduce collateral damage. The next morning, I made an anonymous call to the medical group's administration office. I'd like to report a serious concern about patient confidentiality, I said, disguising my voice with a rougher tone. I believe Dr. Thompson and Dr. Miller, Clara Miller, may be conducting unauthorized private consultations and manipulating hospital schedules. The receptionist took the information. I hung up knowing that the cozy arrangement was about to be officially scrutinized. Then, I drove to Melanie's house. She lived in a duplex on the edge of Crestwood, a place that looked neat but felt temporary. I knocked at 9 a.m., knowing she worked the afternoon shift. Melanie answered the door in a robe, her dark hair messy. She was attractive, with kind eyes, the kind that would immediately put patients and children at ease. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" she asked, her smile forced. "I wanted to thank you for helping out with the girls," I said, keeping my tone warm and genuine. "Clara's been working so many late nights lately." "Oh, it's really no problem. You know I love Chloe and Lily." "That means a lot, especially with all these medical emergencies Clara's been handling. You know, the private consultations with Dr. Thompson? Very professional of them to provide such personalized care." Melanie's smile disintegrated. The color drained from her face, leaving her pale as parchment. She knew that I knew, and she knew that I knew she knew. "I should go," I said, keeping my eyes locked on hers. "Don't want to keep you from your morning routine. Say hi to Clara for me when you see her today." I walked back to my truck, leaving Melanie standing in her doorway, mouth agape. By the time I reached the main road, she was already on her phone, undoubtedly calling Clara with a full panic report. Good. Let them panic. Let them scramble and make mistakes. That afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. "Mr. Miller, this is Dr. Stevens from Crestwood Medical Group. I need to speak with you about your wife." My heart pounded. What about her? There have been some irregularities in her schedule lately. Unauthorized consultations, missed shifts. I was hoping you might have some insight into what is going on. I almost laughed. Clara's affair was about to cost her job, and she was still blissfully unaware. "I'm sorry, doctor, but Clara doesn't discuss work with me. She's very professional about maintaining patient confidentiality." "Of course. Well, if you notice anything unusual, please don't hesitate to call." The psychological pressure was peaking, but it wasn't enough. I needed to move from subtle sabotage to an overt, foundational explosion. That's when I remembered Mitch's words, "Make it hurt." The Riverside rendezvous looked even shadier in the harsh afternoon light. I parked across the street and waited. Thompson's Mercedes pulled in at 2:15 p.m., followed 3 minutes later by Clara's Audi. They were getting lazy, careless, a sure sign that the pressure was wearing them down. I gave them 10 minutes. Then I crossed the street, walked up to room 209 and knocked. "Room service?" I called out in a high, nasal voice. The door opened, and Caleb Thompson found himself face-to-face with the husband of the woman he'd been sleeping with for 2 months. He was wearing a cheap hotel robe and nothing else. His silver hair was mussed, his face a sudden, terrifying flush of guilt and pure panic. "Hello, Caleb," I said calmly. "We need to talk." Behind him, I could see Clara scrambling to pull a sheet over herself, her eyes wide with terror. The room reeked of cheap disinfectant and desperation. "Ethan, I can explain," Thompson started. "No need." I pushed past him, shutting the door. "I think I've got a pretty good handle on what's going on here." Clara managed to wrap the sheet around her, but her hair was wild, her makeup smeared. She looked like a stranger. "How did you find us?" she whispered. "Small town, Clara. People talk, especially when you're stupid enough to have your boyfriend make house calls while our daughter is at home." Thompson stepped between us, trying to find his footing. "Look, Ethan, this is between adults. There's no need for—" I grabbed him by the throat and slammed him against the wall. He was taller, but I had 40 pounds of raw, mechanical labor muscle and 15 years of rage on my side. His feet left the ground for a second, and the real, stark terror I'd been waiting for finally hit his eyes. "The only reason you're still breathing," I said quietly, my face inches from his, "is because I don't want my daughters visiting their father in prison. But if you ever set foot in my house again, I will put you in the hospital you work at. Are we clear?" Thompson nodded frantically, his face turning red. I released him. He collapsed against the wall, clutching his throat, gasping for air. "And you?" I turned to Clara, who was pressed against the far wall. "You want to throw away 15 years of marriage for this piece of garbage? Fine, but you do it honestly. No more lies. No more sneaking around. No more using our friends to cover for you." "Ethan, please, I'm not done." My voice was steady, calm, and terrifying. "You want a divorce? Ask for one. You want to be with him? Move out. But stop pretending to be a loving wife and mother while you're screwing around behind my back." I pulled out my phone and showed them the screenshots. Both of them went white. I have copies of everything. Every text, every lie, every time you used Melanie to watch our kids while you were here playing house. "So, here's what's going to happen. Caleb," I looked directly at the doctor, who was rubbing his throat, "you're going to end this affair today. You're going to transfer to another hospital, preferably in another state, and you're going to stay away from my family. And Clara," I concluded, "you're going to decide what you want, him or us. But you don't get both. Not anymore." I walked to the door, paused, and gave Caleb one final, cutting shot. "Oh, and Caleb, next time you want to have an affair, try not doing it in a place that charges by the hour. It's beneath even you." I left them there, half-dressed and utterly broken. My hands were shaking now, but I felt a terrifying sense of clarity. The confrontation was just the beginning. Now came the final, devastating public execution. Ethan has just dropped the hammer. He confronted the two of them in the most humiliating way possible, secured the promise that Caleb will disappear, and forced Clara's hand. He's won the psychological battle, but he hasn't won the war. In the next part, the public execution, Ethan will escalate the situation one final time. He's taking the fight to the annual Crestwood charity auction, where he'll use a simple, single bid to destroy their reputations in front of the entire town. It's the $1,000 question that will cost Clara everything. Click the notification bell so you don't miss how Ethan unleashes the ultimate revenge. What do you think Clara's final choice will be? Him or her family? Let me know your predictions in the comments. That night, my wife packed 2 bags and left. She thought the war was over. She was wrong. The confrontation in that cheap motel was just the rehearsal. The premiere was set for the Crestwood charity auction. Clara came home 3 hours late that evening, her eyes red, her hands shaking as she tried to maintain a fragile sense of normalcy around the girls. She made dinner in silence, giving distracted nods to Chloe and Lily's excited chatter, refusing to look at me. After the girls were finally asleep, we sat in the living room like 2 strangers stranded at a remote bus stop. The silence was thick, heavy with 15 years of shared history and 2 months of brutal, unforgivable lies. "What happens now?" Clara finally asked, her voice thin. "That," I said, my voice steady and cold, "is entirely up to you. You started this. The question is what you're going to do about it." She started crying then, hysterical, messy sobs that shook her entire body. "I never meant for it to happen this way," she whispered between gasps. Part of me, the old, foolish Ethan, wanted to pull her into my arms to tell her we could fix this. But that part of me was dying, buried under the weight of her betrayal. I felt nothing but a detached disappointment. "Figure it out," I said, standing up. "But figure it out fast. Chloe and Lily deserve better than this performance." I walked toward the master bedroom. She went to the guest room down the hall, and I listened to her muffled sobs until she finally fell silent. A little while later, around 3 a.m., I heard the faint rustle of zippers. When she finally appeared, she had 2 suitcases packed and loaded in her Audi. "I'm staying at Melanie's for a while," she said, her eyes firmly fixed on the floor. "Probably for the best. The girls and I will be fine. They'll stay here, in their home, with a father who never lied to them." Clara just stared at me, the guilt making her face look hollow. She left without another word, her taillights disappearing into the darkness of our quiet street. I stood in the driveway, breathing the cool night air. 15 years of marriage, gone in the space of a minute. But for the first time in months, I felt an eerie calm. The weight was lifted. The war was far from over, but the first round was mine. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange, kind of tense limbo. Clara moved into a temporary rental and threw herself into work, but the wheels of my anonymous complaints were already turning. The first domino fell on a Thursday morning. Dr. Stevens, the head of the medical group, called Clara into his office. Through a contact, a janitor at the medical group who owed me a favor for a massive repair job, I learned that Caleb Thompson was being rigorously investigated for unauthorized private consultations and serious ethics violations. The sugar I dropped in his gas tank was a tiny inconvenience. The administrative investigation was an earthquake. The second domino was Melanie. She found herself under intense scrutiny for providing false alibis and covering up serious scheduling irregularities for Clara. Her supervisor was asking uncomfortable questions about her relationship with Clara and whether it compromised patient care. Melanie wasn't just a friend. She was now a liability. The third domino was the one I'd been carefully setting up since the start. I waited until Friday evening, the night the whole town would be gathered at the Crestwood Community Center for the annual charity auction. This was the event where reputations were built, confirmed, or utterly destroyed, all over cocktails and hors d'oeuvres. Clara wanted to skip it, claiming she was too busy and tired. But I insisted we go as a family. We need to show the girls we're still a unit, Clara. We put on a united front. She reluctantly agreed, knowing that avoiding the event would only make the town gossip worse. We arrived fashionably late. Clara, despite everything, looked stunning in a simple black dress that highlighted her professional competence. Chloe and Lily were excited to see their friends. For a brief, horrible moment, we almost looked like the happy family everyone in Crestwood believed we were. The center was packed. Neighbors, colleagues, local business owners, and town officials. Brenda Maxwell was holding court near the silent auction tables, undoubtedly already delivering the evening news with dramatic flourishes. I made sure to work the room, shaking hands, playing my role to perfection. Ethan Miller, local businessman, devoted husband, and upstanding father. Ethan called out Tom Davies, who owned the local lumber yard where I bought most of my supplies. Good to see you. How's the repair business? Can't complain, Tom. Plenty of things needing fixing in this town. Ain't that the truth? Hey, I heard Clara's been working some crazy hours lately. Everything all right? I glanced across the room to where Clara was talking with a group of other doctors, her smile bright and professional. You know how it is in medicine. People get sick at all hours. Sure. But I heard she's been doing some private consulting work too. House calls and such. The gossip network was humming. Tom's innocent question was really a fishing expedition, a way to confirm the rumors he'd been hearing since I spoke to Brenda last week. Clara's very dedicated to her patients, I said carefully, letting the ambiguous words hang in the air. Sometimes that means going above and beyond normal office hours. Tom nodded knowingly. Well, that's admirable, though I suppose that kind of dedication can put a strain on family life. Every marriage has its challenges, I said, offering nothing more. As the evening wore on, I noticed Caleb Thompson hadn't shown up. Smart. His absence was almost as damning as his presence would have been, fueling speculation about where the dedicated doctor was hiding. It was during the live auction that I finally made my move. The auctioneer, a local radio DJ named Pete Morrison, was trying to drum up enthusiasm for a romantic dinner package at the Gilded Spoon, the most expensive restaurant in Crestwood. The bidding had stalled at $300, and Pete was struggling to push it higher. Come on, folks. This is for a good cause. Don't you have someone special you'd like to take to the Gilded Spoon? A romantic dinner for two? That's when I raised my hand. I'll bid $500, I called out, loud enough for the whole room to hear. The crowd immediately turned. I felt Clara's eyes instantly snapped to me across the room. Pete's face lit up. $500 from Ethan Miller. Do I hear $6? Actually, I said, standing up slowly so everyone had an unobstructed view. I like to make this a little more interesting. I'll bid $1,000. I paused, letting the gasp ripple through the crowd. But only if the winning couple agrees to share their romantic dinner with Dr. Caleb Thompson and his wife. The room went dead silent. You could have heard the air conditioner cycling. Clara's face went white. Her perfectly controlled professional mask shattered, revealing pure, naked terror. I continued, my voice calm and easy, filling the stunned silence. Dr. Thompson has been so dedicated to making house calls lately, such personal attention to his patients. I think he and his wife deserve a night out to reconnect. The gossip mill didn't just explode, imploded. People were whispering furiously, their eyes darting between me and Clara. Brenda Maxwell looked like she'd won the lottery. Pete Morrison, a true professional, tried to salvage the situation. Well, that's a very generous offer, Ethan, but I think we'll stick to the original terms of the prize. Oh, that's okay, I said, offering a cheerful, easy smile. I would draw my bid. Wouldn't want to make anyone uncomfortable. The damage was done. In less than 30 seconds, I had confirmed every rumor, answered every whispered question, and publicly executed whatever was left of Clara and Caleb's professional and personal reputations. The genius of it was that I had never actually accused anyone of anything. Just a few innocent observations about a doctor's dedication. Clara grabbed my arm as soon as the auction ended, her fingernails digging through my jacket sleeve. "What the heck was that?" she hissed, dragging me toward a deserted corner. What was what? I was being charitable. If people want to read something into a $1,000 bid, that's their problem. You know exactly what you did. You just ruined my career in this town. No, Clara, I said, looking her straight in the eye, my voice soft. You ruined your career when you decided that lying to me and your children was worth 2 hours in a cheap motel. I simply made sure everyone in the room saw the receipt. We drove home in silence, the girls happily chattering about the friends they saw. They had no idea the public death their parents' marriage had just suffered. Later that night, the few belongings Clara had left in the guest room were gone. She was already out of the house. The plan was now fully in motion, but not her plan. I stood in the silence of the empty kitchen. My hands were steady. The rage was gone, replaced by a quiet, fierce satisfaction. It was over. 15 years gone, yes, but the betrayal was neutralized. Now the final phase, the rebuild. I made pancakes for Chloe and Lily the next morning, explaining calmly that their mother was going through a very difficult, personal time and would be living elsewhere permanently. They absorbed the news with a quiet resilience only children possess. My phone rang while I was cleaning the dishes. It was Mitch. Jesus, Ethan, I heard about last night. The whole town's talking about it. Good. Let them talk. You realize you just nuked her career, right? She nuked it herself. I just lit the fuse. So what now? I looked around my kitchen at the life I'd fought so hard to protect. Now I thought I rebuild without her. And I get everything I deserve. The divorce, the custody, the house. The hard negotiations were next, but the upper hand was already undeniably mine. The final act was about to begin. She thought I wanted revenge. I didn't. I wanted justice. And justice, I learned, isn't always served in a courtroom. Sometimes, it's served in the merciless court of public opinion. Mike, the fire hydrant Marino, my old friend, had called me right away that morning, his voice full of disbelief. Jesus, Ethan, I heard about last night. The whole town's talking about it. Good. Let them talk. You realize you just nuked your wife's career, right? She nuked it herself. I just lit the fuse. Mike was quiet for a moment. So what now? I looked around my kitchen, where the morning sun was hitting the stainless steel. The house I'd poured sweat and blood and it felt different now, lighter, as if a massive weight had been lifted from every room. Now I rebuild. Without her. 3 months later, the divorce was final. The consequences for everyone involved were swift and absolute, like a storm tearing through our small town. Clara moved out of Crestwood, taking a job at a distant hospital in another state where no one knew about her affair or her very public humiliation. Caleb Thompson did the same. His own marriage was a casualty of their fling. his wife filing immediately after the rumors became public and the hospital investigation began. Melanie Hayes, the accomplice, lost her job at the Crestwood Medical Group. Her reputation was damaged beyond repair for covering up unethical behavior and interfering with hospital scheduling. She moved away shortly afterward. Their web of lies had fully collapsed under the weight of its own deception, taking down everyone involved. I kept the house, gained primary custody of the girls, and watched my repair business boom. Funny how destroying someone else's reputation can enhance your own, especially when you're the publicly wronged party in a small-town drama. Chloe and Lily adjusted to their new reality with the quiet resilience only children possess. They saw their mother every other weekend and during school breaks, but their home was with me. I made sure of that. It was a warm evening in late spring, and I was working in my garden when Brenda Maxwell wandered over from next door. She looked a little older, as if all the excitement of the past year had taken a toll. "Beautiful evening," she said, admiring my tomato plants. "It sure is. You know, I never did thank you." "Thank me for what?" "For proving me right about those doctor visits." I knew something wasn't quite right, but everyone thought I was just a nosy old woman. "You showed everyone the truth." I smiled, remembering that first conversation in my driveway, the moment everything began to unravel. "Sometimes being nosy pays off, Brenda." "Indeed it does." She paused, studying my face. "Any regrets, Ethan?" I thought about it for a moment. I truly considered the question. Did I regret destroying my wife's career? Did I regret the public humiliation, the gossip, the systematic way I dismantled her life? No, I finally said. No regrets. The truth was, Clara had made her choices long before I made mine. She chose to betray our marriage, to lie to my children, to involve our friends in her deception. She chose Caleb Thompson over 15 years of marriage and 2 beautiful daughters. I simply chose to make sure everyone knew about it. As the sun set over our quiet neighborhood, I went inside to help the girls with their homework, to make them dinner, and to read them stories about heroes and villains, and about the importance of doing the right thing. They were my world now, my reason for getting up every morning and working hard every day. Clara had thrown away the chance to be part of that world, and now she was living with the consequences. Justice, I had learned, wasn't always served in courtrooms. Sometimes it was served at charity auctions, in small-town gossip networks, and in the simple act of refusing to let someone destroy your life without consequence. The war was over, and I had won, not through violence or illegal schemes, but through patience, intelligence, and the willingness to play the game better than my opponents. Clara was gone, Caleb was gone, and their conspiracy had crumbled into dust. But I was still here, still standing, still fighting for the people who mattered most. My daughters deserved a father who wouldn't let anyone walk all over him. They deserved to see that actions have consequences, that betrayal comes with a price, and that sometimes the good guys really do win in the end. I had given them all of that and more, and I had done it without compromising my integrity or breaking any laws. The house was quiet now, filled with the peaceful sounds of the family at rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to build something better from the ashes of what came before. But tonight, I was content to sit in my living room, surrounded by the life I'd fought so hard to protect, knowing that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let someone destroy you. Clara had tried to burn down everything we built together. Instead, she only succeeded in burning herself, and I was fireproof. And that's how the story ends, an ending I know will feel satisfying to many of you. Betrayal is a two-edged sword, and I made sure she was the one who felt the deepest cut. If you watched this far, you know these stories aren't just about revenge. They're about standing up for yourself and rebuilding your life from the wreckage. If you appreciated the way I handled this situation and want to see more stories of real-life justice, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I want to know in the comments below, what do you think was the biggest consequence Clara faced? Thanks for watching.